It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for The Last of Us on HBO. On this video, we're going to be taking a look at some recent news, some story details, and some fun teases at what we can expect for the show. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break it down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. First things first, it has been confirmed that The Last of Us is actually getting a companion podcast series, which is going to air after each episode, and it will have guests from the show, the cast, or the creators like Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin. So that's definitely super cool for Walking Dead fans. This is pretty much the equivalent of Talking Dead, but for The Last of Us. The next thing, the first episode has been titled When You're Lost in the Darkness, which is obviously a direct reference to the Fireflies, but it's not really official yet. Now, the reason why I'm not saying it's confirmed is because HBO hasn't come out and revealed, but there's been some sources here and there that have come up with that particular title. The second episode is also titled, but that title has been debunked to be a false title. Craig Mazin actually went on Reddit and said that that was the original title that they were thinking of having for the second episode, but they changed their mind, and the title was something in Latin, and it had to do with the cordyceps. So that's definitely super interesting. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. But when it comes to the first episode, the description of the episode on IMDb is Joel's life is turned upside in a panic during apocalyptic events. Not much revealed here. I mean, if you've played the game, you know that's coming. You know what to expect. So this is definitely nothing new. Now, going back to the title of the first episode, they are definitely teasing at the show using this message, When You're Lost in the Darkness. Recently, they released this picture, which was the graffiti message of When You're Lost in the Darkness in a wall. So it's definitely very, very, very likely that this is, in fact, the title they will be using for the first episode. But like I said, it hasn't been confirmed. Another thing that was revealed about the premiere episode is that it will be 90 minutes long, which is definitely super awesome and intriguing. Now, when it comes to the second episode, like I said, the title, which had to do with the cordyceps, has been debunked by Craig Mazin, but since that was one of the original titles that they were thinking about using, that means that the concept of the second episode has to do with the cordyceps. And that means that it's extremely likely that this second episode will actually be dedicated either fully or the majority of it will be dedicated to telling the backstory for the cordyceps fungus, the origins. We did see this particular scene in one of the teasers, which was a scientist looking at what appears to be the cordyceps fungi. It's definitely a possibility that this is, in fact, a scene from the second episode, and it's definitely likely that they're going to be giving us a very expanded, full-length episode where they're actually going to explore the origins of the cordyceps fungus. Now, the other thing, which I thought was very, very interesting, is this actress here is actually an Indonesian actress. So the scientist is Indonesian, which means that it's definitely likely that the origin story for the cordyceps fungus will be in Indonesia. So Indonesia will be the origin of the cordyceps fungus, which definitely also matches a lot of the details that have come out that we've covered on the channel when we were looking at some behind the scenes photos and clips, which had to do with Indonesian generals and things related to Indonesia. So this is definitely a very solid piece of information to add on top of what we already know. Now, going back to the discussion about the podcast for the show, there are some other podcasts that Troy Baker was actually involved in to tease the show, and he said something very, very interesting in that interview that he had on the podcast. There was two things that he mentioned which I thought was very, very interesting. Now, he was doing the interview after watching like the first 5 episodes, And this is what he had to say. He actually liked Pedro Pascal's version of Joel a little better than his own, which is definitely a very, very interesting thing to say. And it obviously would bring up the question, what does he mean? And, how it could potentially be better. So that's definitely something that many fans are going to be thinking about as they watch the show as well. Now, what I think he means by that is there's a part of Joel explored in the show by Pedro Pascal portraying him that wasn't explored in the video game, which makes Pedro Pascal's portrayal of Joel a little bit better. The other thing he did mention is he said that the first 2 episodes are going to be building up the universe and they're going to be setting you up for after. After the first 2 episodes, you're going to be like fully in it and you're going to be vibing with the show. So that's definitely super interesting. Now, the other thing is if the first episode is building up Joel and Ellie's story and the second episode is telling us the origin of the cordyceps, then what Troy Baker says makes a lot of sense, and the pieces of the puzzle are definitely coming together in terms of what the first 2 episodes are going to be setting up for later in the series. The other thing that Craig Mazin, one of the showrunners, mentioned in one of his interviews is the deaths that you see, whether it's main characters or side characters, are going to carry a weight that they didn't carry in the video game. Now, what does he mean by that? In the video game, obviously there's people dying here and there, and even Joel dies many times. Obviously, you play again when you die, but the deaths that you experience on the show have a lot more weight to them because it's a real death. Like, you don't see the characters ever again. If they're side characters, their deaths are gonna be impactful to the people around them who may be primary characters. The other thing that Craig Mazin did talk about is how Joel is going to be a little bit different in the TV adaptation. One change they're doing in terms of what was there in the video game is that Joel in the TV adaptation is going to be hard of hearing on one side, and the other change is that he's going to have a bad knee. And the reason why they did that is not to make him fragile or look weak, but to show his age and to show that he's been through a lot. Now, I would hate it for them to do this and have Joel turn into a weak character. I don't think that's what they're doing. I think what they're really trying to do, I don't know if it's going to work or not, what they're trying to do is trying to make Joel feel more like a genuine person in an apocalyptic world and not like a video game character. The other thing they mentioned, and this is something that I got super hyped about, and it was something that I mentioned as a prediction in one of my previous videos. In the TV adaptation, they're actually bringing in a new type of monster who wasn't in the video game. So that's definitely super awesome. I mean, they didn't really reveal too much, but they did say that Craig Mazin had a lot of talks with the expert at Naughty Dog when it comes to what the monsters look like, and they came up with an idea for a new type of monster that we're going to see on the show. The other thing they did mention about this monster, it's going to be a female infected who's been underground for a long time. And I think the reason why they're doing that is to give the show its own identity in terms of the types of monsters that you see. Speaking of the monsters, another thing that was mentioned is that they are using a mixture of prosthetics and CG for the clickers and probably the monsters in general. The last thing that they did mention, which I want to talk about, is in an interview with the cast and the creators, Bella Ramsey, who's of course going to portray Ellie, and Pedro Pascal, who's of course going to portray Joel, mentioned that their relationship off screen gradually build up just like their TV counterparts. And that's one of the key reasons why the relationship that Joel and Ellie are going to have in the TV show is going to feel genuine. Last, what I want to show is this behind the scenes photo that was officially released. Super awesome. On the first one, we have Neil Druckmann instructing a clicker to act a certain way, which is super cool. And that scene that they're doing in the top picture is probably the scenes related to the museum, which we've seen in some of the pictures that they've released and some of the teasers and trailers that they've released as well. The one on the bottom is Craig Mazin also instructing a infected to behave a certain way and to scream a certain way. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about, everything that was revealed. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.